Okay, so today we are going to be talking about books that do not get enough attention. Books that, in my view, were absolutely amazing, but they were hidden gems, and now I get to talk about them with you guys because I just don't feel that enough booktubers are talking about them. So, I have 5 books to discuss with you guys today. Let's get right into it. The first book on my list is this book, Bot Wars by J.V. Cade. This is a middle grade sci-fi book, and it's just such a charming story to read, but also there are many different topics that are dealt with throughout the journey that our protagonist takes, and I really appreciated that as well. So, middle grade sci-fi. Before you jump all over me and say, no, Mr. Francy, I'm not going to read that, it's sci-fi. My response to you is, this is a perfect entry into sci-fi. Because it is a middle grade, it's an easy to read book. And this was the first sci-fi that I read, and it was just an amazing entry into sci-fi. The basic premise of this book is that we are following a boy whose nickname is Trout. Trout lives in a world where we have a war going on between humans and robots. Before the book begins, Trout's mother has passed away, and Trout's father is now, single father, is now missing. So Trout is being raised, first he was raised by his mother and his father, now he's being raised by his father, now his father goes missing, so he's being raised by his older brother. There are 2 siblings in the household. But Trout has not for one moment given up on his father. There are a lot of people out there who are assuming that his father is dead because of how long he has been missing for, but in Trout's mind, he's definitely not dead, he's just missing, and Trout kind of gets to the point where he's had enough of waiting, so he's going to go out there and explore for his father on his own. It's one thing to lose one parent, but then to potentially have lost another in such a short space of time, you can understand this boy will be struggling, and we get all the thoughts and feelings that Trout is going throughout this book, and I really appreciated that. I'm very fortunate both my parents are still alive, but when I was quite young, my mother and father divorced. I didn't have any books around where children were expressing their thoughts of being raised either by one parent or, having none. So I really, really appreciated the lengths that J.V. Cade went to with how fully she sat fully wholly and completely she sat within Trout. Also, the journey that Trout goes on, which is the main plot of the story, was a lot of fun. It was great to meet the AI, the robots in this world. They are wonderful. Special shout out to a robot by the name of Scissor, or Scissors, something like that. She is just, oh my gosh, so adorable for an AI, seriously. There's a scene that is not a spoiler at all because it's just a side thing that happens where the robot Scissor sees a puppy, and she's like, "Come here, doggy. I won't hurt you. I just want to play." And it's just so cute. It's so multi-layered and so multifaceted because yes, it is middle grade. Yes, you can look at it from the perspective of it's one straightforward plot, but at the end of the day, there are so many understated things that are going on throughout this book. There's so many layers to this book, so it's very highly underappreciated, and I highly recommend this book to anyone who, if any of that sounds appealing, pick it up because this was amazing. The next book that I'm going to talk to you guys about is Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer. So this is a YA contemporary book, and what I love about this book and Bridget Kemmerer in general is that she writes very hard-hitting contemporary. She will take topics and she will not write her books with her characters looking at the situation through rose-coloured glasses. She'll really peel back all the layers and you'll get a really raw and real look into how these certain situations can really affect someone. The basic premise of this book is that Declan works at a graveyard for reasons that you'll get into when you read the book, and his job is to mow around the gravestones, but before he can mow around any of them, he needs to remove the possessions that are around the gravestones so they don't get damaged. One day, he comes across one of the graves, and while removing some of the possessions, he comes across a letter. He ends up reading this letter, and it just so happens to be a letter that is written by the other character we follow, Juliet, to her dead mother. Declan really relates to the letter, so he responds, and the next time Juliet comes to the grave, her mother's grave, she sees the response and she's not happy. But ultimately, she ends up responding to his response, and this therefore follows a back and forth anonymous writing between the two of them. Now, the point is not determining who is writing the letters back and forth, because we already know this as readers. The point is allowing both Juliet and Declan to go through what it is that they're going through to a very real and very raw level. For Juliet, there are things that she's coming to find out about her mother, now that her mother has died, that she kind of needs to deal with. And on one level, it's that she needs to deal with these things she's coming into, and on the other level, it's that she can't, talk to her mother about this. So Declan is coming from a situation where he's just been handed the worst deck in life. We come to find out a whole lot about how dark his life actually is. There are trigger warnings in this book regarding abuse, physical, verbal, all that mental, all that kind of stuff. And Declan also has a best friend, and his best friend is also dealing with things on an abusive level. And again, it's very raw and very real, so do keep that in mind. Very much a trigger warning before you do go into this book. But if you can handle it, it is done so amazingly well. There is no hand-holding, there is no tying of a nice little bow and sugary sweet and whatever. No, this is very real and very raw, and it's just not, it's not given enough airtime, so I'm very honoured to be able to give it a little more. So the third book I'm going to talk to you guys about today is The Gravity of Us by Phil Stamper. If you've been around my channel, for more than just a minute, you would have seen me talk about this book many, many times. I absolutely love Phil Stamper. He has very recently, this month in fact, released his next book, which is As Far As You'll Take Me. I ordered it today. It's on the way. I can't wait. This is a YA LGBTIQ plus book. The premise of this book is that we are following someone that I honestly do not remember his name. So that's great. Carl. We're following a boy, his name is Carl, who is doing incredibly well. He is basically on a platform that's very similar to YouTube, and he's doing daily reports of different things. Very, very popular, very successful. He's in high school, and a very famous journalist company wants to take him on for an internship. That's how well he's doing. However, unfortunately for Carl Jr., his father, Carl Sr., is accepted into a role to do with NASA and being able to fly a special spaceship. Because of this, the whole family, Carl Jr., his father and his mother, have to pack up their stuff and move interstate to where the NASA base is. It's interesting how we go through everything that Carl Jr. goes through, from, everything he has to give up in order to be there. There's also a reality show that plays out while they're there because of the people who are in NASA, and so cameras are always shoved in their faces, and we deal with how Carl Jr. is dealing with that. And then Carl Jr. ends up getting introduced to a boy who is the son of another astronaut that's there, and Carl becomes rather smitten, doesn't know how to feel, all that kind of stuff. Phil Stamper just did an absolutely amazing job. From the moment I finished reading this, I knew that Phil Stamper would become an author that I would grow to love and appreciate and just 100% trust. And that's why I knew the moment that his next book, As Far As You'll Take Me, came out, that I was going to be purchasing it right away, sight unseen. I don't need to know anything about it. I fully trust Phil Stamper. He did an amazing job. This is just certainly a book that I would say really does the LGBTIQ plus genre proud. Adam Silvera is an amazing author, and I would have included him in this list, but he does receive a lot of attention. Phil Stamper doesn't receive as much attention, and he really, really should. So, I just want to say on behalf of the LGBTIQ plus community, thank you, Phil Stamper, for writing an amazing book, and you guys should definitely read this. If any of what I've said so far appeals to you, pick up the book. You will not regret it. He did an amazing job, and I can't wait to pick up As Far As You'll Take Me. My only regret about this next book, the only sort of con, I guess, if you will, about this next book, is that I don't own a physical copy because a physical copy of this book doesn't exist. And that book that I'm referring to is the amazing Cenote by Sean Horton. If you've been following my channel for more than a minute, you've seen me talk about this book too. This book is absolutely incredible. It is what the genre implies that it is. So, okay, let me talk to you about the premise of the book. Cenote is a book that follows a woman who has gone away on a holiday to Mexico. While she's there, she meets a guy, have a bit of a dilly-dally, but that's not the point or purpose of the book, because this book is not a romance, it is a horror. Okay, so if I go back a little bit to March in 2020, I read a middle grade as well as an adult horror book, so one of each, because I wanted to read a horror. I can't do horror films, but I always knew I would be able to do horror books. So I wanted to read a horror book that was going to do all the things that I want a horror to do. Scare me, freak me out, disgust me, freak me out to the point that I want to leave the light on because I'm convinced I'm going to have a nightmare. Neither the middle grade nor the adult book that I read, neither of them did this for me. And then I had some people recommending books to me that might scare me, freak me out, all that kind of stuff, and none of them did. And yet Cenote, oh my gosh, takes the cake by 1.5 miles. So in regards to there not being a physical copy of this book, I have actually had the privilege of speaking to the author Sean Horton myself and asking him, you know, if it's possible that I just missed out on a physical copy because they'd all been sold, which wouldn't surprise me because of how amazing it is. And he actually explained to me, no, there isn't a physical copy available because of expenses. And that makes a lot of sense. It's a novella, so it's a short book. And then suddenly the two of them fall into a cenote. Now, for those of you who don't know, a cenote is basically like a cave that has water in it, okay? And from the moment they fall into the cenote, it's basically, you know, times are crunching and running out because we need to escape from this place. And cenotes are almost always pretty much impossible to escape from because of the way that they are formed. Will they escape? Will they get out? Only time will tell. All I can tell you is they're not alone. This book was just done so incredibly well. So how did I consume the book? In case you're wondering, I consumed the audio version, which is available on Audible. Sean Horton created this book, he wrote this book, and he did such an amazing job with his creation that it did scare me, it did disgust me, it did freak me out to the point that I was convinced I was going to have a nightmare, all because of the main antagonist, and I did not end up having a nightmare, but I was convinced I was going to. It is a short horror, it's a novella, but oh my gosh, it is so worth it. So if any of this appeals to you, certainly please do pick up a copy of Cenote by Sean Horton. The final book I'm going to discuss today, another book that does not receive enough attention in my mind, is this book, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. This book is so incredible for so many different reasons. So, the basic premise of the book is that we are following, as the cover might, you know, as the cover insinuates, we're following a boy, a mole, a fox, and a horse, and they are having discussions with each other. But that's not the point of the book. The point of the book is not to follow a plot. The point of the book is what is written and also the images. So, here's an example of an image. Right there. Charlie Mackesy not only wrote the book, but he also illustrated it. Every single page has like a sentence or two at the absolute most. And again, the purpose of this book is not the plot, although there is a loosely bounded plot. The purpose of this book is that each page is extremely thought-provoking. One of the lines in this book that I'm basically just going to summarize for you, so this is just on one of the pages, is the mole turns to the boy and says to the boy, do you view the glass as being half empty or half full? And the boy responds with, you know what? I'm just grateful to have the glass. I mean, right. I'm very much a glass half full type person. So to read something like that, of course, it sparks so many things. I have done a review of this book with my mum. It is there. So you can go back and check that out. But every single page has quotes in it that the boy, the mole, the fox, or the horse are having with each other that are just so incredibly thought-provoking that it revolutionizes the reading experience, especially for those readers like me who predominantly read fiction, and I am a plot-driven reader. I'm not a character-driven reader. I don't read books for the writing style. I'm very much all about how was the plot for me? Was it entertaining for me? But the point is taking away whatever your takeaway is just from reading each page and those quotes that come up. It's just so incredibly well done, and I have nothing but high praise and mad respect for Charlie Mackesy. So if you have not read The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse, I highly recommend you do. And if you have a booktube channel, then promote this one once you've read it, because it's really good. When it comes to any of these books, or Cenote, which we'll just put up there, Cenote, when it comes to any of these books, if you have read them and you love them as much as I do, please, yeah, promote them. And also at the same time, not just with these books, but if there are any books that you have read that you notice are not really being put out there, we'll still promote the books and give them the airtime that they deserve. So if you have a book that you have read that you've noticed isn't talked about by the big booktubers or isn't around those popular circles, put it out there. Absolutely. But that is where I am going to leave it. Are there any hidden gems that you have that you want to discuss with me? Let me know in the comments below. But in the meantime, letting you guys go, peace, blessings, and so much love. Mwah. And I'll see you in the next one. Happy reading!